I sent some examples for Thodai from Japarangalaviruthi. I would just like to show you quickly how it works. I think this is a set of materials, see, which I sent out in the handout. See, if you see, the one thing about Thodai is historically the number of Thodai increases, right? So one way to look at it as a historical development, I thought there is another way of looking at it as a kind of one representing minimalist theory and another representing a maximalist theory. And the minimalist theory is just to have Eduhai and Eduhai across Adi. I mean, that is a minimally expected Thodai. And then you go expanding both in terms of the kinds of Thodai, which basically has five, which are called Yeduhai, Monai, and Yebu. And these are actually the slots or locations. Yeduhai is Mona is the first letter, Yeduhai is the second letter, and Yebu is concerned with the final seal. And then to which are added Arabadai, which is not a slot as such, but it got fills the slot, and also the Muran Thodai. So this 5 could be expanded into 7 or more. Another aspect of the minimalist theory is that these Thodai would be in the first seal. Right? I mean, that's the minimal. Then you could have it in all 4 seeds in a standard word. And also the another minimalist thing is that the first seal across a D would be in pairs, 2, 1, 2, 1, and 3, 4, like that. And the maximalist would be to have this Thodai in all the adis of a poem. Right. So if you take the first one, it's Mavum Pullum Vadivayir Padara, Mani Virinda Puvum Kumba, Malai Todutta Kodayum Kamala, Malai Vanda Vadai, Mayon Innuir Purathiruttatre. Right. Here you could see that the first one it's a Monai, Ma, Ma, and Ma, Ma, Ma. Right. So this is the I think this would be part of a minimalist theory. Later on, this extends to include what's called Varka Eluthu, that is, you could have the consonant and all vowel combination. So you could have.
I'm sorry, Professor.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you tell which handout?
Yeah.
Which handout are we looking at?
Yeah, it is the one I sent. I think last one. It looks like.
Is this
like
the Thodai Vahai, Moran Vahai?
Yeah.
But
right. No, it is Moran Vahai I sent this time. It is the previous one.
The one
which
previous.
is Monai Adi. I think it's
so
called
the Tohai illustrations.
Tohai Enikai or something. Tohai illustration.
I mean, I'm talking about the folder.
Yeah, right.
It
has a name Tohai in it.
I would find it. Thank you.
Yeah, Tohai Nikkei, right? It's called Tohai Nikkei. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You got it?
Because I was confused that it was the same of for last time. So let me see. What is the page number?
This is
40.
139 and then 140. Yeah. First one is 139.
Yeah.
So that's what just now I read to see with morning example.
Yeah, this Mavum Pullum
Yeah.
Vadir
Yeah,
Padara.
right. So that is the one. Yeah, she
Yeah.
found it. Right?
Okay, so it's in the email with the title Tohai Vahai Illustrations.
Yeah. Okay. So this one.
Can somebody send that to me, because I think
Yeah,
that
I will forward this to you right away.
Thank you.
Yeah. This one is an example for Monet across lines. You could have Monet across lines or across C's. And this example is for Monet across lines. This would apply to any todai. And the second one, on the next page, that's page 140, you have Monet across C's. Right? So when you have across C's, the slots have a pattern, right? So so you don't have to have todai in all 4 C's.
Okay.
Right? So you could have some pattern. The first one is inai. So inai is adjacent C's. So if you have Monet or any todai, we are exemplifying with Monet. So if Monet with is adjacent C's, it is inai Monet todai, right?
Monet todai.
Right?
So,
So you have animalar, asohin, talir nalam, talir nalam kavatri.
Yeah.
Right? So here you have animalar and asohin. These are first and second seeds. These are adjacent seeds, and therefore this is inai. Right? And the second one is polippu, arit kural kinkini aratrum siradi. Here you see in first and third seed. Right? So that's called polippu. I mean, the etymology doesn't give anything, but this is the name they give for that. Right? So 1-3 would be polippu. And then the next line is ambar kodinji nedundir agatri. So this is the first and last seed. So the first and last with a gap in the middle is called oru. See, this is the oru todai. This is oru monai todai. And then the next one is ahand alhul amnun marungul. What is left out is the last one. You have monai in the first seed. So so this is called kure, right? And then you have Arumbiya Kongai Avvalai Amathon. See, you have 1, 3, and 4. Right? So this called Merkaduvai, which I have called in that note as blank on the left. Right? So if you have the twos break in the middle, and the next is Avirmadi Anaya Tirunudal Arivai. So you have 1, 2, and 4. 3 is blank, right? So that's called Kil Kaduvai. This is a blank on the right, and the Mutru is Ayilmel Anukki Ambalathu Amarnda. So you have Monet in all 4, right? So so this would be called Sir Monet. The area is called Adi Monet. Yeah, okay. So the next one is an example for Yeduhai. You take the second verse in that, with the title in Sevenba, which is okay. Wadi. Okay.
What is the page number?
This is page number 143.
Okay.
Right. It would be the second, third attachment.
Yeah.
In that one. So that is a page number 143.
Yes.
Right. So this is okay. Madiyirkan Nirmal Malha Valpurutkat Sendar. Then you have Kadiyar Kanangulai Kanargol Katil, Idiyin Murakkanji Yin Kavul Velam, Pidiyin Purat Tahita Kai. So here in the first C, you have Vadiyed, Kadiyar, Idiyan, Pidiyan. So the D is the second letter, which is recurring, and this would be an Adi Adi in Yeduhai. So yeah. Adi, see, it is, okay, it is said that it would be preferred one that even though it is stated in terms of letter, the matre also matters. You see, for example, you have Vadiyel, and the next one is Kadi. See, both are, the first letter is a short one, right? Asai has the Kuril, so that is a preferred one compared to having something like Adir and Kadi. Right. The second one is a long, long vowel. Right?
Just a question. This Vadi or Kadiyar, does this count both as Monai and Edugai or not?
No, it is only Yedugai because first is Va, the second one is Ka, and that is Monai. So
Yes.
they are.
Because V and K, Iv and Ik are different, so that's not Monai.
Right. Yeah.
A and Ka are
no, it goes by Eluthu. So Va is one Eluthu, that is the Monai.
Yeah.
And then D is another Eluthu.
And that is Yedugai.
That is Yedugai.
Okay.
Right?
But so my question would be on the third one. This Yor Yar. What is it? The fact that it has the same length.
Yeah, right.
Does it
right,
mean anything?
Right.
And does it? How do you call that?
Okay. So in the minimalist, it is only one letter.
Yeah.
Right? But it could extend over the whole C.
Right.
So that is an elaboration of that. Okay. So that is not a requirement of Yeduhai.
But it's an elaboration upon it.
No, this also would be Yeduhai in the sense that instead of just a second letter, you have the same letters following in the third letter, fourth letter, fifth letter, like that. So this would be an expansion of that. So if this expansion happens to give you different words, then it would be an recurrence of words. So you go from letter recurrence to C recurrence to word recurrence, right? Recurrence, right? So that is how the expansion takes place. And they also mention this. You see, if a line starts with Nirayasai, right? The second the second letter of Nirai would be the slot for Yeduhai. Right? So Yeduhai and Monai would be in the same Asai. Right? But if the line starts with Nerasai, right? So the Yeduhai would be in the second Asai. So you have two physical manifestations of this, and there also they put the condition that when Monai is in the second Asai, that means the first Asai is Ner, right? And the second is also expected to be Ner, right? Ner, Nerai, something like that. So this is further conditioning of the occurrence of Yeduhai, right? So one way to look at this is there is some kind of some kind of aesthetic value scale, right? Say one is a minimal, right? So if you have the other conditions met, and that goes up in value of the sound aesthetics, right? So under Yadhai you have different manifestations. On Mone you have different manifestations, but they differ in terms of their oral value or oral aesthetic value, right? So if you look at the next one, that is page 144 in the handout. Yeah, you got the handout, Sasha?
I'm still trying
you
to,
still-
waiting for my mail.
Okay,
But I will
okay.
have it in a minute.
Yeah, right. This is 144. This is Yadhai with Sir. See, the earlier one is with Adi. This is with Sir. See, Ponnin Anna Purisunangendi. Right? So, Ponnin Anna. So, first and second Sir. So, these are adjacent Sir. So, this would be Ina Yadhai. Right? So the same way as we looked at for Monet, you have the different variations in the pattern. So you could think of four seeds, and various combinations are possible, or various patterns are possible. One is inai, 1, 2, or 3, 4, right? And then 1, 4, and then 1 and 3, and 2 and 4, like see, like that. So that is how this system of slots work. So Ponnin Anna, this is Inai. Panmalar Kongin Nannalam Kavatri, right? Panmalar and Nannalam. So this is the first and third, and that would be Puripu. And Oru is first and fourth. So you have Minnavir, Olivadam, Tangi, Manniya. So Minnavir and Manniya. Yeah, is there. So it goes all the way like that, as
And
you
this is
saw with
Yedugai.
This is Vedihai. The earlier example was with reference to Monai, but in all cases of Monai, whatever the type of Todai is, you will have these two. See,
Okay.
over Adi
Adi
or
or
over
over
Seer.
Seer.
And the Seer has, when you have Seer Todai, right? Seer Monai or Seer Vedihai, whatever, it could be further subdivided in terms of the pattern, right? Whether it's adjacent or other patterns of the four C. So you can look at this as a kind of a matrix.
Yeah.
Right? So you fill different slots, and then you get different kinds of tode. So this is how the todes create a sound pattern, right? Right. Then you have you have the I think the next one they give is Muran, that is page 157. Right. The Muran, as I said, as I also sent you another handout this time, is about semantics, right? See, the meanings are contrasting, but there are two kinds. One is Solmuran, that is when there is a lexical contrast, and then a semantic contrast. Usually they will go together, right? When you have lexical contrast like Pachai and Sivapu, Karupu and Vellai, there is they are antonyms, and their meanings are also contrasting with each other. But but when they purely from a linguistic point of view, you will not have, let's say, you will not have a lexical contrast which doesn't have a semantic contrast, right? See, they would go together. But they try to make distinction between the two, and that works when you have a phrase rather than a word. Right? So when you have a phrase, so the example they give is, I think we discussed that in the previous class. Suppose you have sem and karum, that's a lexical contrast. But when you look at from the point of view of the head of this phrase, it is not used in the sense of the color red and green, but it is used in a metaphorical sense. So they say that there is a lexical contrast between, because the word semai and karumai contrast, but in terms of meaning, it is not the contrast of the meanings of colors, but it is a different one, and that is not a semantic contrast. So, so if if you take out, okay, so the other one they give is when it is a contrast between a phrase and a single word. Right? See the example which I in that see the okay. So if you look at the handout which I sent this time, see the first one is from Tirukkural, Tunburum Tuvamai Illahum Yarmattum Inburum Insol Avarku. Tunburum, Inburum would be both lexical contrast and semantic contrast. The same thing with the other one, Adakkam Amararul Uikum Adangamai. This is in the Seer, right? Adakkam and Adangamai are lexically contrasting in terms of negative and also in meaning. And then when you come, the next example I have given is Sevver Sei Thirumanam Marutta Karuvit Kanavan Varivalar Ilare. Right? So here you have Sevvel and Karuvel. This Karuvil, this also would satisfy that there is both lexical contrast and semantic contrast, because I'm sorry. So this would have a semantic contrast because veil and will belong to the same semantic class, and therefore there is a contrast. Whereas this sev and karu is a lexical contrast. But it's not semantic, because the Seville is not about a red sphere but about straight sphere or something like that. And the Karuvil is also not about a black bow, but it is it's about a killing bow or something like that. So the meaning of these modifiers are different from their lexical meaning, and therefore it is an example of not having a lexical contrast but having a semantic contrast. Right? So the other examples are also like that. See, to me it seems some kind of overkill, right? See, they are trying to make the distinction between soul and purity. You see, if you take Yeah, if you take the last, towards the end, right, you have one Nedunir Poigai Kurunar Tanda Tanpani Avil Narum Nin. Right? Here, the contrast is between Nedunir and Kurunar. Right? There is a lexical contrast of Nedu and Kuru. Right? In the first one, there is a head, Neer, right? But there is nothing to contrast here because Kurunar is a single word, right? So therefore, this is a case of having a lexical contrast, but no semantic contrast, right? The last example is a converse of that. Sendi anna sinattayane neernasai perat kanal. Okay, here sendi is a phrase, and neer is only a single word. Right? So in that contrast, ti and neer are semantic contrast, right? Both being the 5 elements, you see, it belongs to the semantic category. But there is nothing paralleling red with near. Right? So there is no contrast there. So this is a case where you have contrast with the heads of a phrase, but not with the modifiers of the
So,
phrase.
but this is would be then Purul Muran?
Yeah, this would be Porul Muran, but no Sol
But
Muran.
no Sol Muran.
Right,
Okay.
right. So, I don't know how far Sanskrit grammarians go in this kind of contrast, because we enter, at least I feel, we enter from the field of Todai, which is phonetic, to semantic, which is an area of Ani. Right? So when you come to Muranadai, Muran Todai, I think we are changing the ground from Todai to Ani, or from prosody to poetic kind of thing, right? It took a while for me to figure out what they mean by these kinds of contrasts, you see, the thing. These are so in the
Can I ask you a question about this example of Sir Yeduhai?
Yeah.
Which was this this was Mon Sir Adi Per Ahal Alhul Wal Bo. This was Muran.
No, Muran?
This Sir Adi Per Ahal Alhul Olhubu.
Which one? This for Mone or for Edu?
It was on page 157.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, 157. This is an example for Muran.
Which happens between Sir.
Yeah.
Because
once you
Ahal.
come to Muran, it would be Sir, which also would be coterminal with the word.
Okay.
Because it's between Sol and Purul, right? It's no more with letters and Sirs.
Right. Okay. But in that Adi, I have a question, which is probably silly, but this last two Sir, Al-Hul, Wal-Hubo, they are actually, they would have Yedughai in the sense that the second Yedut seems identical, but the point is, among the examples we saw, there is no Yedughai that works if there is no if the first Sir of the line is not involved.
Yes.
So in order for it to be Yeduhai, you always have to have it in the first Sir too, and this is something else. So I cannot call this Yedughai.
Yeah, in what I call the minimalist theory, the first Sir must have.
Okay.
So that is a constant, right? Then the variables come from other Sirs, right?
Okay.
But the problem I find is, suppose you basic principle is violated, minimalist principle is violated, and you have Edugai only from the second seal.
Like here,
And
right,
like here, generally they don't reject it. They will come up with a new name with that.
Okay.
Right? So the poets have an upper hand, right? So if you have created a poem and it's the grammarian's job not to reject it, but say that this has a new subtype or it has a new variation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's what I find. See, if you read Seyuliel of Tolkapiam, he also mentions some variations like this. Right? But these variations at the time of Yapurangala Virutti, maybe even earlier, are treated like varieties. Right? So variation to varieties is a major change from Tolkapian's times to the later. So once you identify each variation as a variety, then you have to give it a name. Right? So that's what happens. Otherwise, you could have a simple rule. This is the base rule, and you could have variations in that, right? So that's not the way they do this. That's why you have abundance of names of the types, right? And then the page 169. That's an example for Arabadai. So the example, the verse you have is Tha Ta Marai 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 Malar Ulaki Poon Kuvalai Podarundi. Right? So here you have Arabadai recurring across lines and also across seal. Right? Right. You see it throughout. If you have the theory suggested that there is a scale of aesthetic value, then it see, when they say that when they say that having more todais like this, it's both in Adi and Sir and all Adis and all Cs kind of thing, increases Osa Inbam, right? See, it is phonetically more pleasing, right? So I'm not sure whether this addition, with this, we're putting it in a higher level of hierarchy is purely phonetics, or it's also difficulty of doing that. See, naturally, this would be more difficult to have monae in every seer and every adi, but when they say that its aesthetic value is high, they say that it is because phonetically it is more pleasing, but I think there is some kind of hidden thing. It's more difficult to produce, and therefore it's highly valued. Maybe that's my idiosyncratic view of that, right? Then, you have page 163. You have Yaibu. Right? Page 163, you take the final seer, ends in Sura, Sura, Vara, Taha. Right? So it's both Arabadai, which is recurred, and it is in the final fourth seer. And one verse down, Mayor Kundal Kuralum Nalla, Kundalil Venda Malarum Nalla, Malarid Unganum Nalla, Pararpugal Vodiyum Nani Nallave. Right? So here Nalla is repeated, so you have the repetition of word. Right? So often this happens when there is a recurrence at the end, as Yebu, the final rhyme. It could be a word. Right? And that you find in Bhakti poems like Potri, like that. When you have it in the first C, then we saw one example where it becomes a topic, right? Var. It is Marupattana, Tol. something like that. So this the repetition in the first and in the last have some syntactic correlate, right? So it's not just phonetic, right? It's you have a syntactic function for that, and then you have so in the page 164 you have just not a word but asai which is repeated or எழுத்து which is repeated. மொய்த்துடன் தவழும் முகிலே பொழிலே மற்றதன் அயலே முத்துறள் மணலே நிழலே இனியதன் அயலது கடலே, like that.
So, but
So
the fact
you have A here. A is at the final seed, which is repeated across the line, but also it is repeated across seeds, right? But the seed is not the first one like Mone or Edhai, but the last one, right? So you have in the first one Muhile Polile, right? And then Nirale Kadale, right? Nahile Yele.
and so this is Yebo.
Yebu.
Across seal.
Yebu could be, Yebu, unlike English poetry, is not just the final one, but it could be in the middle seals also, right? But only thing is, it's not the first asai, but it's the last asai,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
This is an example of that.
Okay.
Naturally, these things are all created by the grammarians to illustrate their point, right? You find that many of them are unsourced, right? Maybe the commentator created to explain a point. See,
But that verse that we were looking at yesterday, which had Yena in the third seer and Yena in the final seer, that would be an example of Yebo across seers.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And the last one is, last but one is called Iratai seed. That is in page 190. Right. It is the repetition of word is the example. It could be a repetition of seed also. Right? Paduho, 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 paduho. Right. This is the same word is repeated throughout throughout the line. The next one is also nirpave, nirpave, nirpave. Right. So these are example what they call iratai. See, that is the doubling of the whole seed, or the seed could happen to be a word, so it's the repetition of word.
In page
This is page 190.
190. Okay.
Yeah, page 190. So this also has a syntactic implication, right? So the repetition increases pathos or whatever, right? So it's not just phonetic, right? So you can see that Todai from phonetics to extends to other areas of aesthetics, right? And the last one is Andadi, which is not mentioned in Tolkapiam, which is a later development, which is page 194. Right? So here, munnir indra annir ippi indra ilangugada nittilam payanda nermanalekkat, like that, right? See, the last seed becomes the first seed of the second line. It goes on to the entire verse, right? So this is called Andadi, right?
Which can be between Adi, but also eventually between
It could also be between seeds.
And between seers.
Right. So if you go to page 196 in the same handout, you have the second verse, Mena Makkalarulum Vianarum Kalame. So me in the first seed,
And
as
in
a
the
mone,
last.
then in the last.
And that is
Okay.
Andadi, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it also follows in the next one. You have Melaha Visumbin Vedalodu Varume. So it is not only first and last, but also the fourth becomes the first. See, the first is four, fourth is first is four, four is first, like
so
that.
It's
That's why it's
both
Andadi.
for mones and for Yaibu, but since it's all the same, it's more complex than that.
Yeah, Andadi is more complexified or something like that. I mean, you throw a greater challenge to the poet to do that, right? But the claim of the grammarians is it increases the aesthetic value or the sound value, right?
I mean, at any rate, it's important to remember that it's a theorization after the fact rather than something that goes into the making of a poem. Right, the poets don't sit down and say, how can I create a nice murra?
That is true of all literary theories, right? After the poet does, right?
No, because some of this you actually need to have skill in the versification. You need to know what a venba looks like in order to make one.
That is
right. So the earlier part of the things you discussed are things that the poet needs to know, and this is now just secondary meta level.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you have a minimalist framework, and you should know that. Yeah. But when you deviate from that, then the grammarian has to find a rule to accommodate that, right? Yeah. Unless in the extremely rare cases you throw it out as bad poetry. Right? Yeah, that is very rare as far as I could see in Tamil prosody. I mean, I have not seen much which is thrown out that it is ungrammatical.
See, no, because there's also the rule that you cannot speak badly about preceding poets.
Right.
I mean, Gopalaya was very clear about this. I often tried to get him to say something negative about that. Said, so did you mean that Meenakshi Sundaram Pillai, that this is a bad poem? And then he looked at me, no. That's not what I meant.
Yeah. You can use that terminology only for a student writing poetry, right?
Yes.
So the teacher would say, no, it's bad. See,
our enemies in the anecdotes that we have, right? But those we only have from the 19th century.
Yeah, once a student poet graduated to be a poet, then whatever he does,
then there's nothing you can do. That's right.
Fine, the grammar.
It's poetic license.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So it looks like that in all of the Andari examples, there's no erukai. So except for the one where it's the 1-4 pattern,
what is
the minima verse that we just read. So this just raises a general question about the co-occurrence of these torai. So it seems like you can expect it as a kind of default, in your words, as a kind of minimalist expectation. But once you start adding torai, then you might, for instance, remove the erukai in order to achieve andari or something like that.
Yeah, but I don't know whether probably the theory has another condition of physical proximity, right? So if that is there, then you cannot have Yeduhai to be part of Andadi, right? Because you have to first has to be physically proximate to the, the last C should be physically proximate to the first C, whereas Yeduhai, something intervenes, right? The physical proximity is lost. So my guess would be that in Andadi, the physical proximity is also a condition.
I guess the other point is that it would be, it would impose an additional constraint on the kind of, if you have to have the erukai at the second position and throughout the entire verse, then that imposes a constraint on the kinds of words that can repeat.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it would constrain the creativity aspect of poetry. I mean, that does happen when you have the other conditions like Chitrakali and things like that. I mean, the formal aspect of it takes over the spirit of poem. So there is a very fine balance between the two, right? So this is Todai. The way I see it is it's a matrix which you fill it in different ways, and what you fill in is called Varnam, right? So the Varnam, the meaning is color. I read that it is. I don't know. I mean, I read somewhere that it says that there's a German saying that you paint with sounds. I don't know. There is something that not. So it is something like that. I mean,
yes, actually, it is it's just the way that people say it. Lautmalerei means literally painting with sounds.
Yeah.
It's how we translate onomatopoeia for
Yeah,
us.
right. Yeah. Okay. So the Varnam is a paint with sounds. It's a paint in the sense that you choose the paints, right? So you have the matrix, and then what you fill could be chosen by their phonetic affinity, right? So you could you could choose that see all I mean all monae are yedigai are stop consonants in this in the whole poem, like that, right? From the point of view of the grammarians, they, yeah. Oh, before that, I mean, in Todai, we started with five, that is Monai, Yeduhai, Yeibu, Aravadai, and Muran, right? Then they added Andadi, which is that. Then the other one they added is called Niral Nirai. Niral Nirai is a reciprocal thing. So that's also a semantic relationship, right? The example I found was that the first line says that Mulai Kalingam, then it goes on, and the second line starts with Malai Paravam. Right? So the first line says that garment wrapping the breast, that's the relationship, and the second line says the sea wrapping the mountains, right? So this is a semantic relationship. The first semantic relationship is reciprocated with a different kind of object in the second line. So this is called Niral Nirai. And the another
Can you repeat the example? It was
so
Mulai
it is Mulai Kalingam, and then the line, and then Malai Paravam.
Paravam.
Paravai is the ocean.
Right. So, but this semantic relationship is not even expressed. It's implicit.
Yeah, it is
so
implicit.
you don't have. You actually need to understand that this is what's happening to the breast and the ocean, but there is no verb that tells
No,
you that.
no. I mean, the one line describes the breast and the other line describes the hills.
Yeah.
And then you see there is a relationship between the two, right? I mean, I said that the point I'd like to
Beautiful,
make is that even when you take Murandarai, right, there is a lexical contrast, right? So at least some phonetic element is involved. When I say Tunbam, Inbam, or as in the Tirukkural,
Right, exactly.
there is a phonetic contrast. But once you come here, it's purely semantic.
Right, but I must say that in this specific example, there is also some phonetics that I wouldn't be able to describe, but saying Mulai Kalingam and Malay Paravam,
No,
maybe also has a...
No, you do have, but that is an Edugai.
Yes.
Yeah, it has an Edugai element, but the relationship is not phonetic. What you call Niral Nirai is
The
not a
Niral
phonetic
Nirai, yeah.
relationship. As a lexical contrast, it's a phonetic relationship between the two words, right? So it's purely semantic. That's what I said, that Todai over a period of time has moved from sound to meaning, right? So I think that's a big shift, see, in the theory of prosody. This doesn't seem to have gained traction, because it was hard to find an example of this. The other one, they say that, okay, Mone and Eduhai, you could also have the third letter recurring.
Okay.
Right. So that is another expansion of that. That also didn't gain traction, but so they remain in the periphery of the Tamil theory, right? Okay. Now coming back to Vannam, Tolhappier simply says that Vannam Nalaindahum Vanname, or something like that. So Vannam are 20. Right? So what he means by 20, according to Ilamburanar, is we have this 5 todai into 4. The 4 would be 4 seeds. Right? So you have 5 todai in each of the seeds. So that 4 into 5 would give 20. So you had 20 slots you could fill paints with, right? You could put the words of phonetic content, right? Then when you come to Yapurangala Vritti, I mean, it might have started earlier, because much of what Yapurangala Vritti additions start from Kake Padini or others, so we don't know when it really started. They make it 100. So there are 100 kinds of Vannam, right? It's too much of paint, see in that. Right? So how they come to 100 is according to Ilamburana, the first 20 into 5, and the 5 stands for different voci. Again, we don't know what those vocis are. So they have 5 things. But my sense is, when we listen to the tapes, once you bring in Vannam, the way you render the poems seems to overwrite the 4 vocis. Right? So once you start, say, okay. Okay. So when it comes to yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The 5s are not different voci. The 5s are Kuril, Nedil, and then 3 consonant sets. Valaduthu, Maladuthu, Naladuthu. Right? So depending on that, you make it 100. So it's just jugglery with a number, right? Instead of okay. So once you have that, suppose you have a Varnam where you have a needle in all the C's, then you start to sing it with some emphasis on the needles, right? And in that process, the overarching Asarya marks, that is lost, right? At least my guess is that when Varnam gets importance to that, I think that also contributed to the loss of the Osais, which were defining the poem.
Okay, and that would be the relationship between Varnam and rhythm, actually, of the poem.
Yes,
when you were saying
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you have the rhythm and the Varnam variation within the rhythm?
I mean, whether Osai and Varnam go together, or whether Varnam imposes because of this use of a certain type of earth in its own rhythm.
I mean, at least the belief is that Osai continues. Right?
Yeah.
But I have not seen anybody singing with both Varnam and the rhythm. Right? I mean, to begin with, we don't know what exactly the Osai is. And then to that you add that you have this kind of Varnam variations into that. So we'll just listen to some Varnam recitation. You will see that you don't have anything. So last time I gave another handout, which is examples of Varnam from Thevaram, Gnanasambanda's Thevaram. So it's called Rhyme on Mount Kailash is the first one.
Yes.
Yeah, Pattaravu, right? Let us listen to that, how he sings that.
இது பட்டினப்பாலையில முட்டாச்சிறப்பின் பட்டினம் பெரினம் முட்டாச்சிறப்பு முட்டா சிறப்பின் பட்டினம் பெரினம் அப்ப இது வல்லோசை இந்த அடியில மிக்கிறது வள்ளி செவண்ணம் சொன்னார். அதே மாதிரி திருமுறை ஆற்றுப்படல முட்டாட்டாமரை துஞ்சி முட்டாட்டாமரை துஞ்சி இது வள்ளி செவண்ணம் சொன்னார். பிற்காலத்துல இதுவே அந்த செய்யுள் முழுவதும் பயின்று வந்து விட்டது. இத உரையாசிரியர் வேறுபாடு பார்த்தோம். என்ன சொன்னாங்கன்னு சொன்னா, அது இந்த செய்யுள் முழுதும் பயின்று வந்தால் அது அது அந்த மாதிரி செய்யுள் முழுவதும் இது போல வல்லோசை அல்லது மெல்லோசை இது போல பயின்று வந்து இருக்க இது மிக அரிது, கடினம். அதனால இன்னாதென்று கருதி இவ்வாறு செய்யுள் முழுவதும் வல்லோசை பயின்று வருவதை மிரைக்கவி என்று சொன்னார்கள்.
So there is a name for it.
மிரைக்கவி சித்திரகவி. மிரைக்கவி என்பது சித்திரகவி. இப்போ தொல்காப்பியர் காலத்துல, சங்க காலத்துல ஒரு அடியில ஒரு செய்யுளில ஒரு அடி அல்லது 2 அடியிலே ஒரு சிறிய அளவிலே பயிலப்பட்ட இந்த வண்ணம் என்ற உறுப்பானது பிற்காலத்துல செய்யுள் முழுவதுமாக பரவியது, செல்வம் முழுவதுமாக இருந்தது.
So as he says that Tolkappiyam, I mean in Sangam you have this what's called Varnam is only in one line, it doesn't go beyond one line. Later the whole verse has this kind of Varnam, and that is reflected in Tolkappiyam also in the sense that in his sutras about Varnam, he just gives some names, there is no explanations or things like that. So I think Varnam becomes more important in later times, and also probably that coincides with the time when the verses were set to music, right?
அத உரையாசிரியர்கள் மிரைக்கவி அல்லது சித்திரகவி என்று சொன்னார்கள். இந்த மாதிரி மிரைக்கவியை முதல்ல தமிழ் இலக்கியத்துக்கு அறிமுகப்படுத்தவர் திருஞான சம்பந்தர். இப்போ ஒரு பதிகம், பதிகம் என்று சொன்னால் 10 பாட்டு கொண்டது பதிகம். 11ஆம் பாட்டு அந்த பதிகம் சொல்லுதுன்னா வரக்கூடிய பயன் சொல்றார். இப்ப கைலமலையை பற்றி ஒரு பதிகம் பாடுறார். அதுல பாட்டு முழுதும் பாருங்க எப்படி அந்த வல்லெழுத்தே வருது. புற்றரவு பற்றியகை நெற்றியது மற்றொருகன் ஒற்றை விடையன் செற்றதையில் உற்றதுமை அற்றவர்கள் அற்றுணைவன் உற்றநகர் தான் சுற்றுமணி பெற்றதொலி செற்றமொடு குற்றமில தட்டனவினாய் கற்றவர்கள் சொற்றகையின் முற்றுமொழி பெற்ற கையில் ஆயமறை. அப்படி இந்த பிரெட் ஸ்லைஸ் போட்ட மாதிரி சீர் அந்த ஓசை.
So here I don't see any of the osai, the rhythm on the kind. He emphasizes the hard consonants.
புற்றரவு பற்றியகை நெற்றியது மற்றவர்கள் ஒற்றை விடையன் செற்றதையில் உற்றதுமை அற்றவர்கள் அற்றுணைவன் உற்றநகர்தான் சுற்றுமணி பெற்றதொழில் செற்றமொடு குற்றமில தெற்றனவினாய் கற்றவர்கள் சொற்றகையின் முற்றுமொழி பெற்ற கையில் ஆயமலையே. இது வல்லிசை வண்ணம். மெல்லிசனம் மெல்லெழுத்துக்களே பயின்று வருவது. அது ஒரு இந்த சங்க இலக்கியத்துல 500 பாட்டு வரிகளை மேற்கொள்ளா காட்டினாங்க. பொன்னின் மன்ன புன்னை நுண்டாது மணியின் மன்ன நெய்தலங்கழனி. இது மெல்லோசை பயின்று வந்தது. இது மெல்லிசை வண்ணம் என்பது. இதே கைலாயமலை பற்றியான சண்மந்திர பாட்டுல சிங்கவர மங்கையர்கள் தங்கன சங்கை நிறை தங்கமரதோய் எங்கள் வினை சங்கையவை எங்ககள வங்கமொழி எங்கு முழவாய் திங்களொரு நுங்க ஒளி விங்கி விடு தொங்கலோடு தங்க வயலே கங்கையோடு பொங்கு சடை எங்களிரை தங்குகையில் ஆயமலையே. மெல்லோசையே போறாரு. இது மெல்லோசை செய்யுள் முழுதும் இருப்பதனால இது மிரைக்கவின்னு சொல்லுவாங்க, சித்திரகவி.
If you want to look at it, that is under the title Vadavari Kolapuli. In that it is the third verse. The first verse is also all. I think he sings that also. It's all with idayeluthu Vadavari Kolapuli Keelapuli, and then the next one is Mellaluthu.
இப்ப அதே மாதிரி இடையெழுத்து பயின்று வருவதுக்கு அது இப்போ சங்க இலக்கியத்துல சொல்லும்போது சங்க பாட்டில் ஒரு மேற்கோள் காட்டுவார்கள். வாழ்வெள் அருவி வரைமிசை இடியவும் கோள்வல் உழுவை விடரிடை இயம்பவும் லகர லகர யகர ரகரங்கள் மிக்கு வருவதனால இது ஈபு வண்ணம் என்று சொல்லுவார்கள். இடையெழுத்து மிக்கு வருவது ஈபு வண்ணம். இதே இந்த கைலாயமலை தேவாரத்துல ஞானசம்பந்தர் பாடுறார். பரியதிரை பெரியவனல் வரிய ஒலி உரியதுடைய வரிசையுடையா வரியவளை அரியகனி உருவினோடு உருவினவர் பிரிவில் நகர்தான் பெரிய எரி உருவமது தெரிய ஒரு பரிவு தரும் அருமை அதனால் கரியவனம் அரியமறை புரியவனம் மறுவுகையில் ஆயமலையே.
That's way down on that. Jnana Samandar. See, if you go through that Singavarai, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, Pariya. Yeah. The next one he doesn't sing. That is Melladith, the nasal. The next song I couldn't identify where it is. But
so he gives the names to all of this Vannam, right?
Yeah. So it is by the recurring phonetic
recurring phonetics. But do we have some treatise in which these are extensively classified like that, or is this just the common knowledge?
No, it is mentioned. It is mentioned in Aprangalavirthi.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So it would be, but they also use the term Isai here.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, Isai and Todai are sometimes used synonymously.
Okay.
So here it is Isai. Clearly, it is about sound, right? And the interesting correlation is that these are called Pasuram, right? So from Pa we come to Pasuram. Suram is music. Right? So when you come to Pasuram, then you have all these kind of Vannam. Right? The example he cites from Sangam, which is still Pa, it's not Pasuram. You have only one line, 2 lines, something like that. Right?
இனி பாட்டு முழுது நெட்டெழுத்தே பயின்று வருவது.
Yeah. So, wow.
இல்லாட்டி நெட்டெழுத்தே வருவது. அது வந்து புறநானூறு பாட்டு ஒன்றும் உதாரணம் காட்டுவாங்க. ரொம்ப அருமையான ஒரு பாட்டு. அதாவது தலை சொல்வா, போருக்கு போன எல்லா குதிரையும் திரும்ப வந்துருச்சு, எங்க தலை போன குதிரை மட்டும் இன்னும் வரல அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவா. அது பாட்டு ஒரு சோகம். எல்லாரும் வந்தாச்சு, என்னுடைய குதிரை மட்டும் வரல. அப்ப என்ன, தலைவன் அங்க போர்க்களத்தில் இறந்துபட்டான் கருத்து. மாவாராதே மாவாராதே எல்லார் மாவும் வந்தன, எம்மில் புல்லுளை குடிமை புதல்வர் தந்த செல்வன்னூரும் மாவாராது. என்னுடைய மகனுக்கு பெற்றுக் கொடுத்த என்னுடைய கணவன் தலைவனுக்கு புல்லுளை குடிமை புதல்வர் தந்த செல்வன் ஆகிய என்னுடைய கணவன், அவன் ஊரு மாவாராது. இந்த பாட்டுல முதல் வரி மா வா ரா தே, மா வா ரா தே, மா வா ரா தே, மா வா ரா தே. இந்த முதல் வரியில 4 சீரும் நெட்டெழுத்து பாண்டது. அது வந்து நெட்டெழுத்து பயின்று வருகின்ற வண்ணம் என்று சொன்னார். இது பிற்காலத்தை மிரக்கி வருகின்ற பொழுது, பக்தி இலக்கியங்களை வர்ற போது, ஏதமேல பூதமோடு காதத்துவன யாதி முதல் வேத விகிதன் கீதமோடு நீதி பல ஓதி மர வாது வயல் நாதன் நகர் தான் தாது போதி போது விட ஊது சிற மீது துளி கூதல் நதிய காதல் மிகு சோதிகளர் மாது வயல் கோது கையில் ஆயமலையே. பாட்டு பூரா நெட்டெடுத்தது, மிரைக்கவியாக வந்தது. இனி நெட்டெழுத்தும் குற்றெழுத்தும் ரெண்டும் பயந்து வருது பாருங்க. அப்ப குறிஞ்சி வண்ணங்கள் குற்றெழுத்தே பயந்து வருது, நெட்டெழுத்து இல்லாம கடைசி பாட்டு முடிகிற போது மட்டும் நெட்டெழுத்து வரும். பாட்டுக்கு நடுவு பூரா குற்றெழுத்து வரும். அது குறிஞ்சி வண்ணம்னு சொல்றாரு. அதை வந்து ஒரு உதாரணம் காட்டுவாங்க. புறநானூறு வரி பாட்டு தான். குரங்குளை பொழிந்த கொய்சுவர் புறவி. குரங்குளை, உலைன்னா பிடரி மயிறு, அத சிசஸ் வெட்டி இருக்கக்கூடிய பிடரி குதிரை. குரங்குளை பொழிந்த கொய்சுவர் புறவி. இது வந்து குறிஞ்சீர் வண்ணம் அணிந்த பாட்டு, அணிந்த அடி என்று சொல்வார்கள். இந்த குறிஞ்சீர் வண்ணம் பாட்டு பூரா இருக்குது. குறவங்கம நறுமென்குழல் அறிவை அவள் வருவ பொருவங்கரி வடவென்றதன் உரிவையுடல் அணிவோன் அறவும் மலை உணலும் இளம் அதியும் நகு தலையும் இரவுஞ்சடை அடிகட்கிடம் விரிநீர்வியல் ஊரை. இது அந்த ஓசை பாட்டப்பதான் அடையும். சும்மா குறவங்கம.
Stop here. So I think he has one more song. So this is one up, right? So you see if you have the analogy of color, see, one is with red and another is with green and something like that.
So, but Varnam is predicated upon the fact that certain sounds provoke certain reactions in the people who listen, right? So hard sounds mean something, and soft sounds mean something else. But this is something that people listen to, and I guess people who are like at ease in the language guess that this sound is supposed to mean this or that. I mean, let's say there are certain universal, a lot of hard sounds say something to me, but a lot of ra or this or that, I wouldn't be so sure.
Yeah, I think part of it, or most of it, is cultural. I mean, it's not universal, right? The hard consonant express war, right? In Tamil, you find it in Kamban and others. I don't know how universal that is, right? So it's like onomatopoeic words. I mean, it's sound symbolism, but it's culturally
inflected. Right.
While Lord is a dog, see, that's the Tamil way of looking at the barking of the dog. Whatever is smooth. I mean, these are all, I think, cultural.
So again, we don't have anything written down about this. I mean, do people think about if you want to write a word poem, you put a lot of ka or like...
No, I mean, you have you have critical essays about these things, but it's a sort of circular. You take a war poem and then they say
and
that
this is how you make a
it's
war
not
poem.
So it's not. There is no independent evidence to say that hard consonant create harsh feelings. Right. I mean, that's a psychologist should have some experiment to say a connection between hard consonants and harsh feelings and kind of thing, or nasals and lovemaking or whatever. Whatever it is. But so far, Tamil psychologists have not taken up this project.
I was just curious.
So I have two questions.
Yeah.
So, one is following on Margarita's question is about. So there is this concept of guna
Yeah.
in Sanskrit poetics, and that answers to a lot of these questions about phonetic or auditory texture. And it's in the realm of gunas that some of the associations between double consonants, nasal plus stop consonant, like aspirated consonants, and those are associated with various gunas, and then those gunas are associated with different themes or rasas or whatever. So does that? I mean, I assume that comes in with the Dandi Alankara, but
I think Dandi Alankaram should speak about it, but I have no idea about that.
No, not
No.
in the other tradition.
Okay.
I mean, Dandin may. I don't know Dandi Alankaram very well, but the rest does not.
But I have
Yeah,
my
rest I
doubts
know.
because
Right. But Dandi Alankaram is the place to relate it to rasa.
Yeah.
Right?
But
Yeah.
isn't that the translation only of the second book of actually the Kavyadarsha? So actually the whole initial treatment, maybe gunas are in the beginning of the Kavyadarsha. I'm not sure this is in Dandi Alankaram.
Okay, so because gunas are in the first book of the
Yeah, in the
Kavyada.
first book, but I think Dandi Alankaram start with the second. Even though it incorporates in the comments certain discussions of the first, so maybe one should really look through the commentary a bit in detail. No?
Then it's an interesting question why Tamil theory doesn't think of relating it to rasa. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's a general kind of rasa phobia, so people just don't think of things in terms of rasa, right? I mean, it's like, people did in the 19th century, but not in traditional poetry. And I mean, the classification here is, interestingly, is again, it's purely scientific in the sense that the classifications of Vallinam and Mellinam are actually those of the Yerutarikaram.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really just hard sounds which we have already phonetically identified can produce this kind of Vannam, but it doesn't speak about the psychological effects. Right? And there's no theorization that this produces a certain response of any kind.
Right. It's purely a linguistic
classification, but not further. Yeah.
So, and the second question was about the rhythm of these varnams. So, bracketing the question of osai and whether this falls under the category of osai or not. A lot of the examples that we just listened to do actually have this repetitive rhythm that sounds a lot like the Sanskrit, like Totaka or Bhujanga Prayata. These metrical patterns that have like da 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 da, and those are the kinds of things that you would see in like marching songs or in descriptions of battles or things like that. So, but they're not. These varnam are not described in terms of their rhythm, but rather the recurrence of these eraptu, right?
Yeah, but recurrence relates to rhythm, right? Doesn't it? Right. So there is a rhythm in the recurrence, right? And the recurrence by itself is to create some kind of effect.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, see, if you look at, I don't know whether anyone has done a consolidated thing. If you look at the commentaries of Tamil literature, the commentators point out these kinds of things in poem, but I haven't seen any coherent theory of how these relate to various emotions or various rasas, whatever.
No, and there also seem to be certain periods when poets do it more.
Yes.
So Kamban does it all the time. Is very given to playing with sound. Others don't. I mean, there are other poems where you really, out of thousands of stanzas, it happens, 10 times, 20 times, but not. Kamban happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would say
Shinkanban,
then
not
it is
that
an
much.
individual poet's choice, right?
I mean, to a certain extent. Or, there seems to have been a fashion at certain times, maybe. I mean, it's also not, Kamban is part of the whole, larger opening towards Sanskritic things. So who knows? I mean, who knows how much, if there was a Kamban, how much Sanskrit he knew, and or she.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Okay.
But in the 19th century, does it become completely standard that the poem should have a lot of this?
No.
Or do we also have like Vannam deprived
yeah, absolutely.
poems?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, a lot don't have. I mean, they don't. I mean, there's always a Vannam that ensues automatically. Right?
Yeah.
But it's not composed according to the Vannam.
Okay.
Yeah. See, in pedagogy, it has become a kind of challenging exercise, right?
Okay.
The student will be asked to compose one with using only
This one.
Vallinam and things,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
things like that. So it is used to test the skills of students. What they say is basically it tests the depth of your vocabulary. Right, you see.
Because
Come
you
up with
need
just-
to come up with words, synonyms.
And remember how Besky, for instance, organizes his Nigandu accordingly,
Yeah.
or Nigandus in general are organized accordingly to the
Synonyms.
Dodai possibilities.
Yeah.
of words.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is like the rhyming
Dictionaries
words,
or something.
dictionaries,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
For
With,
rhyming,
rhyming
words,
dictionaries.
right?
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
something like that. So then, I mean, we complete a discussion of at least the basic units or limbs of poem. Then we can move on to the pa types, right?
Okay.
I thought we could start with Venba here, right? As we started with saying is pa is only one kind of sayul, right? The other kind of sayuls were listed like Notpa, Vaimoli, Pisi, Mudumoli, Angadam, and things, things like that. So if you ask the question, is there any commonness between non-pa sayul and pa sayul in terms of the prosodic features we see? I mean, certainly certain things are not expected in the other things, right? I mean, certain things you find if you take proverb or riddle, having this Yedugai Mone is a common thing. But as far as I could see, they don't follow Tare. Right? I don't think the sutras follow Tare.
Okay.
Right? Even Yedhai Mone is there, but that's not a requirement. See there. So I don't know when this term was created. For sutra, the word nurpa, right? So you try to call it pa rather than sayul, right? But it doesn't have many of the characteristics of pa as we discussed so far.
So
Right.
what does make it sayul?
Sayul is a much broader category. One thing is versified, and according to Tolkapiam, it doesn't have. It is not defined by the lines, adis, as poems are created, right? So, for example, at the lower end, there cannot be a pa according to Tolkapiam, which is one line.
Okay.
Right? But later on, Swaminathan tries to include that. So for him, Annayam Pidavum Munnari Teivam is one adi asriyapa.
Okay.
Right? Right? But aphorisms like that are cheyul.
for
Yeah.
previous theory.
Yeah, Annayim Pidavum Munnari Devam, you have Yadugai there, and these things are, they qualify these things, but by the Adi definition, it is not, right? And the same Swaminathan also include Nupa as a fifth pa.
Okay.
Right? So there is a different way of looking at that. But from the Tolkapi's conceptualization, pa is only one kind of sayur, and whatever we saw so far, not all of them would apply to all sayurs. Right? Some would apply, some won't apply. Right? So this. Okay. There are 4 types of poem called Pavahai, which we all know, Asuriam, Venba, and Kalipa, and Manjipa, right? So there are relationships between these poems, which we'll see later. The first is what differentiates one poetic type with other. So what differentiates one type of poem from other types of poem? I think there are 3 features. One is the length of seed in an adi, which is measured by the number of asai. So whether it has irasachir or movasachir or narasachir, etc. So see, the length of seed is one factor. For example, in Asiriyam, you would have irasai, see, not movasai and things. And longer one. The second criterion is the presence of what's called urichir. The urichir is a chir which is privileged for a particular pa. See, for Venba, you have the kai chir, which is a 3 assay chir, and so presence of that would also help you to determine that. And the third criterion is the length of adi measured in terms of the number of seeds, right? Where you have irisi ready, muchi ready, nachi ready, and like that. So one is the length of seed, and the other is length of adi, and the third one is special cheers like uri cheer, which would define a particular poetic type. So these are the 3, and overarching defining feature, as we have been seeing, is osai. So the osai would differentiate all 4 with a specific type of osai for each of them. We have already seen Venba is sepal osai, which is like the osai of question, answer, and question, which is like these all of these have some relation to folk poetry. So this is they say that Vallaipaattu, where you are pounding something, one woman asks a question, the other one answers that. That kind of osai is called sepal osai. And Asiriyappa is Ahaval osai. Ahaval osai is calling. So you are calling somebody, which would be a kind of, they say it's open-ended compared to the sepal osai. So that would define Asiriyappa. And Vanjippa is Tungal osai. Tungal is hanging. So the sutra, Tolkapi Sutra defines it seer atru, right? So the osai breaks in seer. That's one understanding of that. So you can imagine swing which is hanging from one end to the other end, then it comes back, right? So it's not like column, it goes on like this, right? It's kind of swinging, and that is for Vanjipa. And then Kalipa is Tullal Osai. Tullal Osai is some kind of frolicking, I mean, jumping up, going up and down, up and down, up and down. You see, so that is more like surfing, right? Go up and down, up and down, up and up and down. So this is the overarching feature. And the one interesting aside is that Tolkappen doesn't mention the name of Osei for Venba, right? Which is Sepalosei. He simply says that its Osei is not the Osei of Asariyappa. Right? So he defines it negatively. So it led some scholars to argue that, I mean, there's a lot of discussions about the historical antecedents of these, I mean, relationship between the four poems. So, so one argument is that this sutra suggests that Asariyam is the earlier one, and Venba came later, so he is defining it in contrasting with that. What is not Asariyam is Venba. Tolkappen Sutram itself points out some relationship between the parts, and see, this Asariyam and Vanji have more common features, and Venba and Kali have some common features. We'll see when we see these different parts how they relate each other. Already we saw examples with that Syriac at Pirine. In Asariyappa you have Vanji Adi also, right? So there is a kind of close relationship with that. See, one fact about the history of this pa is that the number 4 seems to be constant, right? It seems to be a solid thing, right? There is some resistance to add another pa. And it also follows that there is resistance to have another Osei. There are only 4 Oseis, and everything is fit with that. The later effort when Sindhupa came into Sindhu came to the end, there is a resistance to conclude it as a 5th pa, right? It's still kind of a limbo, right? Whether it is part of that. And in Tolkappen's time itself, we have a pa where the first part is the Venba, and the first 2 lines are Venba meter, and the second 2 lines, second part is Asariyappa meter. Right? So it's a kind of fusion, right? So you fuse 2 meters into one, but this does not make a 5th kind of pa. The fusion pa is not a different pa type, right? So they have a special name, it's called Marud pa, right? The 2 pas have been something kind of image conflict or something like that. It's a Marud, right? It's either this or that. And Tolkappen himself gives a reason why this is not a separate 5th pa. He says that it doesn't have its own meter. It has either meter of Asariyam or either meter of both. It has both meter of Asariyam and Venba. Since it doesn't have its own meter, it doesn't have its own Osei, and therefore it is not a separate pa. Right? there are only 4 parts for 2,000 years. I mean, that's a long period to maintain a theory, right? Unchanged. You see, that. So even the latest change would be Pudukavidai, right? Which is the 5th Kavidai, but you can also accommodate somehow within these three. I mean, that's a tendency to that. So this part type division is very conservative theory, you see, not allowing any change over a period of time, right? Okay, if you take, let's take Venba first. See, as the name suggests, it is white pa, and the Tolkapia's name for it is Venpattu, right? So part 2 later on comes to mean something with music, but in his time part 2 and pa are the same synonyms like pattu pattu, etc. Right?
This pa come to be associated with caste also, right?
Yeah. So this is later on. I don't know when, which century, must be very late. It's considered to be a Brahmin pa, right? Pure, right? So white stands for purity.
Yeah.
So, it's called purity because this is the only it's the only pa which doesn't allow mixing, right? So all other paths we have mixing of talai and things like that. But one path which doesn't allow any mixing is this pure path, and that is Venba, right? You could immediately see that the Asaryepa origin from folk, where there is more flexibility and fluidity. Here is the Pulavar's path. Right? So there is a clear purity condition to that, and that's why it has an alternative name of Vanba, hard pa, right? And
Quite cute.
so Venba is Vanba, right? Okay. Whenever we look at a pa type, I think we can still use the earlier notion of minimalist versus maximalist, right? So there would be a minimalist in the sense that would be taken as the standard. I don't think the describing it as ideal won't fit. I mean, it's a kind of standard. Others are described in relation to that, right? So that kind of standard would be the minimal. When it comes to Venba, the minimalist position would be it would have 4 lines, right? And it would have 4 C's, right? 4 C's, and it would have Irasaichi, that is the Yerchi, but it also allows one Muvasaichi, that is ends in Kai.
Okay.
Right? So that ends in name. So it's basically Yerchi. There are both kinds of Yerchi. So in Venba, you will find both what's called Machir and Velachir, right? So anything that ends in Ma would be Irasai, and ends in Ma, and Velachir would be Irasachir, which ends in Nirai. Everything would be found in Venba. In addition, you have a Muvasachir, which ends in Ner. So that would be, the seed types would be Temangai, Kuvilangai, Karuvilangai, Pulimangai. All these 4 would be seed of Venba. So this this see the Yerchi is generic, right? It's found in all poems, right? But there are certain seeds which are specific to poems, and this Muvasai cheer are, let's say, as is easy to include the whole gamut, the Kai cheer. When I say Kai cheer, it means it's 3 asai and ends in nail. I mean, that's the acronym of it. So that is called Urichi. Right? So Urichi means that it is privileged for Venba. So what it means is that when you find this Urichi, Kaichi in other parts like Asariyappa, then you have to talk about mixing. Right? So nobody would talk about mixing when you see Yachir in Asariyappa and Venba, right? Because that is generic, that's universal. You see, it comes in any pa. But the Urichir would trigger that you have a mixing. Yeah. So, so the theory would not say that Asariyappa also allows Kaichir. It says that it mixes Vensir.
Okay.
Right? So that is the significance of theory in having this concept of Urichi. Okay. Then so far the features of Venba are 4-line. That is, the name for 4-line is Aravadi. Right? Aravu is Aravu stands for standard measure, right? When you say that Aravu Lama Sapara means going beyond the standard, right? So that's the standard. So Aravadi is the standard, and then it has North Cheer, that is 4 cheers, and 4 cheers, and each cheer could be Yer cheer or Kai cheer. That is the characteristic of Venba. In addition, there is an extra feature, which is the last line of 4 lines would have 3 Cs. So it's shorter adi compared to the other one. And an additional condition is that the last C of the last line, that is the shorter line in Venba, would have Uriyasai. Uriyasai would be Nerbu Nerebu. Right. Because Asai also you have this Yelasai and Uriyasai. So you will have Nerbu and Nerebu, right? The canonical form given in the commentaries is Kasu for Nerbu and Pirapu for Nerebu, right? So another feature, I mean, I'm still talking about a minimalist structure of Venba. Another is the 4th seal of the second line. 4th seal of the second line could stand alone.
Okay.
So it stand alone in 2 senses, but I had to check the first one. It doesn't participate in Sandhi with the preceding seals, right? It stands alone. I think that's what I found in some of the poem, but I'm not sure whether it is a Sandhi split edition or the whole edition.
It's
I don't know.
A printing problem, right?
Yeah,
But
right.
it's where the hyphen comes
Yeah,
from
right.
too, right?
I don't know whether how the old manuscript hold it.
I think
But
they did that.
yeah, other one is it is syntactically aloof. I mean, it's not syntactically connected to the rest of the center. The rest of the ID, the second ID.
Okay.
So these are the reasons it's called Tanichwal. It also happens to be maybe it's a requirement that it would be the seed, that seed would coincide with sol.
Okay.
So with seeds, you have an option of coinciding with a word, but it's not necessary, right? But with the tani, with tani chol, so it is also called tani chir, right? It stands alone, but it's also tani chol, right? So you'll see the significance of this just in a few minutes.
But as for tarai, this is normal.
Tarai, yes.
With the rest of the line, of the adi, etc.
It would be, right? Yeah, that's also important thing. Okay, it also has another name, or more than one name. The another name is for Tanichol, at the end of the second line is Kun. I mean, kun has two senses. I think it's used in both senses. One is hunch, right? Because it's shorter. So there's a hunch, and also it is used, I think, from its function, like a cone, like an arch. See, it connects the first two lines with the last two lines, right? So it's a connector. It's an arching seed, right? Between the two, right? So that so this is the and also also they say that Tanichol stands outside the rhythm. Right? So it breaks the flow of rhythm. So the rhythm breaks there, and then another thing starts. Right. So the okay. So what? So the Tanichol has certain consequences. See that. See, okay. When you have okay. Tanichol stands alone, right? That means we can take it out without hurting the poem in any way. Once you take it out, then it becomes two venvas of short lines. That isn't a four line, you have two lines.
Okay,
right?
because...
So that's why kun, I mean, two, okay, two are connected. So this kun is a connector. See, it's an arc. See, it connects the two. So that would relate to the fact that when you go away from the minimalist, which says four line, you could have variations in the lines. Right? So you could have kural, you could have a venba with two lines rather than four lines, which would be called kural venba, right? Short venba, because kural adi would be the short to adi. Okay. Then so the kural adi also would have the other features of venba, that is the second adi will have three C's rather than the last C. Right. So first line would have four C's, and second line would have three C's, and you have the two, right? And so when you break, okay, there are two ways of looking at this. One, there are two kural venbas. You combine them into one normal venba, adding a tanichal in between. The other one is, there is a normal venba, and you break it into two, right? When you okay, so in the first one, okay. In the first one, when you okay, when you add a tanichol, from 2 Kural Venba, you might have a Talai problem, right? Right? So the last seed of the second line may not collocate with the Tanichal you are choosing. So they allow some tinkering.
Okay.
So they say you can add an aside to make your Talai work.
Okay.
Right? So that is the name Asu.
Asu. Okay.
Asu has a meaning of a powder which the smiths use to connect two metals. Right? It's a kind of soldering or something like that. So you could do that. So you have that freedom of adding an extra assay to meet the requirement of Talai.
So and you would add this extra assay between the third seer and the Tanit Shol in a way that this would be Ventale.
Yeah, right. So this would be a problem because we said that the last seed of the second line would be Nerbu or Nerebu.
Yes.
So that might create problems for Talai.
Yes. Right.
Even if you treat it as Ner and Nirai.
Okay, because the third seer of not only the fourth but of the second line is also
Kural Venba, it would be like that.
Yeah, okay.
So you need some kind of cement.
Okay, to work through that.
So they call it Asu. I mean, it's a kind of metallurgy you have to do that. You see, otherwise they don't stick
Together.
Together, right? So that okay. Okay. So this would be yeah, okay. So this takes us to Talai. So the Talai for Venba is Vendanai, right? It has 3 Talais. One is between Yerchir, between Irasachir, which is heterogeneous, right? If Nindrasir, that's the first one, ends in Ne, the Vandasir should be in Nirai, right? If the Nindrasir is in Nirai, Vandasir should be in Ne. So this is a heterogeneous requirement. But when the Urichir, that is the Kaichir is there, the Nindrasir has Kai, that is Ne, and Vandasir should have Nirai. Nirai. So, sorry, Ne. It should have Ne. So there it is a homogeneous thing. So this is the feature of Talai with Venba. As I said that this is very very strict, right? Very rigid. You never, not only you don't allow other talais, that's one aspect of it, you never break talai.
Okay.
Right? So the Venba is intolerant of breaking talai, and now you know why it's called Venba. Right?
So, and then basically there are only 2 options then. Either it's heterogeneous between Yer Sir, or it is a Talai in Neir. Because the only Urichir which has 3 assay that is allowed in Venba is a Kaichir.
Yeah.
So it must be forcibly followed by a Neir assay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So this would contrast with Vanjichir because there the Mosechir would be Kanichir, and there you would have the Nirai. So okay, these are the basic, the minimalist thing. So now, what are the variations you have? The variations. Let's say the first one would be in terms of the number of adi. Right? So they say citralai and peralai. Citralai is the lower boundary and peralai is the upper boundary for that. And the lower boundary is 2. Right? You cannot go less and 2. I mean, that's the definition of par, so par doesn't go below below 2, right? And some grammarians, they cite Palgayanar, puts it at upper limit. Upper limit, the normal one is 4, right? But in the later work, you find it 12. Yeah, Venba could run up to 12 lines.
12 lines.
Yeah, 12 is the parallel, is the upper upper limit. But others, like some Palgainer, puts it at 7. Right? 4, 7, 12. Right? Yapparangalakkarya is very liberal. It doesn't put any upper limit and leaves it to the poets. Right? So you could have any number of lines. So this is one variation. So that already we saw that it gives you Kural Venba.
Yeah.
That is the short Venba. And if you have 3 lines, it's called Sindhiyal Venba. Sindadi is 3. Right?
So, but when we have something of 3 lines, we repeat the pattern of the first line twice, and then we have a Muvasai Adi.
Yeah, I'll come to that.
Okay.
I'll come to that. But you could have 3 line Venba.
Okay, that's, yeah. Okay.
3 line Venba. You could
But what
also.
are the examples for 12-line Venbas?
I have to check.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen.
I'll check.
Because they're also conveniently 3 times 4 lines.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah. So when you have 4-line Venba, it has a special name which is called Samanilai Venba. Equal. Equal Venba, or equal, not equal, Sama is a balancing thing, right? 2 and 2. See, we'll see more when we come to Kalipa. You can look at these poems not only as composed of lines, but also in terms of inner parts.
Yeah.
Right? So you have the first part, the later part, right? So here in Venba, there is a balance between the first part and the second part. This would become very clear when you come to Kalipa. The parts would include like Taravu, Talisai, Suridam, etc. I mean, the parts are very, very clear. But for Venba and others, the parts are not spelled out, but they seem to operate with that kind of thing. There are parts. It's not that all 4 lines are the same kind of thing. So this so this Gopalaya gives another meaning for Samanale Venba. He must have taken from some tradition, there must be other tradition, which is that it's a Venba with even number of lines, right? Like 4, 6, 8, like that. And the upper converse of that is called Viennile Venba. So Vm is a term for unequal Vm. So this is odd numbered. So 3, 5, 7, right? So that would be Viennile Venba, right? Okay. Okay. So this is by the number of lines, right? From 4, you got 2 to 12 variation. And then when you come to number of C's, see 4 is the standard, right? That also could be 3 in fixed context, but it's also possible to have 3 in other places. right? All odd numbers would be 3, right? Even number would be 4. That kind of combinations are also possible. When you have that kind of the kind of alternation between 4 and 3, Veerasuriam comes up with a special name for that, as usual, right? I don't know, maybe it's trying to accommodate some Sanskrit theory or not. So basically, when you have 3, then this Venba doesn't have Tanichol.
Okay.
Right? It also doesn't require Uriyasai at the end. Okay, right. So it would be more straight 4-line and 3-line. And the name he gives to this is interesting. He calls it Savalai Venba. Right. And Savalai is a Tamil term which is used for a child whose sibling is born too quickly. Right. So the idea is that child. So if the next child is born within 10 months, right, the first child is denied breast milk sooner, so it's get leaner. Right? So this is a lean Venba, right? Instead of 4, you have 3. So I don't know whether getting rid of Tanichol has anything to do with Sanskrit poetry, right? Because basically this is what it boils down, right? So you don't have Tanichol, and you could have a name for that.
But you don't have Tanichol and you have 3 lines of 4 seer, or the last line still has 3 seer? Sorry, you don't have Tanichol and you have 3 lines
the last
of 4
will
seer.
have the last will have 3 seers, and the first will always have 4 seers.
And the second one will have 4.
The second one would have
Because
okay.
usually if it is a 4, you have 4, 3 plus Tanichol, 4, 3.
Yeah, right.
If we have 3 lines, we have 4 seer.
Yeah.
4
The second
seer,
the second could be 3 seers.
Okay, either
The
3
first
or 4.
the first and third are fixed.
Okay.
Right.
And the second you can juggle, but there is nothing like Tanichol with its special characteristic in the game. Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So the Tanichol comes in handy when you split the seers, right? If you have some extra seer, you can break it and say there is a Tanichol, so it doesn't count in the number. And things like that. So this is the variations on the basis of the length of adi and the number of adi. So variation. The third variation, which I will see next Wednesday, would be based on todai.
Okay.
Right? So that gives some variations into Venba. So as I have been saying, that Tamil prosody is very liberal.